Welcome to Big Impact Louisiana, a series spotlighting the nonprofits, leaders, and changemakers transforming communities across our state. Brought to you by ViaLink in collaboration with the Louisiana Data Collaborative. This series explores how leadership, data, and community come together to create real, lasting impact. These are the stories behind the work, the people making change happen, plus a little lagniappe for you along the way. Hello, everyone. Today we're going to be talking about opportunity, creativity, and the power of technology to change lives. Our guest is someone who has spent decades building software, creating games, and now opening doors into tech careers for the next generation. John Fraboni brings together worlds that don't usually meet in the same sentence. Award-winning musician, video game developer, and a founder of a nonprofit that teaches people how to code their way into the future. I'm so glad that we can have John Fraboni on our call today because I've had such great experiences in seeing his programs grow over the year. Operation Spark is an amazing organization, and I can't wait for him to share more about it. So, like, for my opening question for you, John, is your journey spans from music, software development, and education. How would you describe the path that led you here overall?
Well, before I answer that, I just thank you for the invitation to be here, and it is great to
No
see you
problem.
again. I've for anyone listening, I've known Shirkwell for since maybe 2014. I think we met.
Yeah, probably so.
Yeah, so we go way back, and you guys were first running. You guys were running that conference up at Delgado, eh? That tech
Yeah, the
conference.
Teen
Remember that
Tech.
Teen
Yeah,
Teen
Teen
Connect?
Tech
Yeah,
Day.
yeah. So we did like some workshopping in the early days. Like it was really just me back.
Yeah, it was just.
It's just me. So that's back when we were starting up. So how did I get this started? The question. So I had lived in New Orleans before Katrina for 4 years.
Mhm.
I, like you mentioned, I had a career as a musician, and I was here on a scholarship from, I think it was the Ontario Arts Council. It was like an arts award. Um, and I'd come down here to study with a great jazz musician, and I was, so I stayed for 4 years and I worked a lot down here. I studied and I worked and I was playing a lot, and I had a lot of good friends from those years, and um and I also got a lot out of it. I was working like 7 nights a week as a musician in
Mhm.
New Orleans, and a lot of great musicians were good to me and all that kind of stuff. So when I went back up north, that it really my career as a musician kind of exploded in some ways
Mhm.
because of the experience I got to have here, and the amount of playing I got to have, and the kind of you know sound and everything that I absorbed from down here. And um, later, I got back into the video game industry. Fast forward to 2009, I was doing that, and I was working in the video game industry. I just sort of kept one leg in software development over the years and kind of stepped in and out of the career, the
Mhm.
field. When I'd moved to another city as a musician and all that, I would keep it up. I'd maybe take on work as a software developer, and then around 2009, I, I was I got off the road. Basically, I was touring with a group for a number of years, and I got off the road with them, and I was like, okay, I'm not doing this anymore. Like it's a lot. I don't want to travel that much, and it's really hard to, you know, when you're on the road with somebody and then you stop, um, you have to work your way back into a scene. And
Mhm.
I was like 38 or something at the time. I was like, I've done this so many times, I'm not doing it anymore. So I took a salary job as a software developer in the video game industry, and I stayed in that field for about 6 years. I came down here again on vacation uh, in 2013, and I was staying with a friend of mine, Amanda Buberger, who ran the Tulane Center, or was one of the directors or development persons over at Tulane Center for Public Service.
Mhm.
He'd take me around to a bunch of events. I was just tailing along to things. We talked to a lot of people in education, and the Tulane Center for Public Service. They do a lot of volunteer work with their student body at Tulane University,
Mhm.
and they place them in these places like, sorry, my cat's attacking the computer. Um, so he took me around to a bunch of, events with educators and all this kind of stuff. And we talked to a lot of people about how there just needs to be more opportunity and pathways for young people. Um, and we started talking a lot. And it piqued my interest at the time. I started looking into numbers of, what was going on for young people in New Orleans,
Mm-hmm.
especially if they're coming from more challenging situations financially and things like that. How the university pathway was, what was it netting was positive results for people, and there was a big drop off there for young people. We could see that lots of people, even though the high schools had improved in some way in New Orleans, like there was higher graduation rates, there was still a lot of dropouts going on at universities. And so young people were, even if they did make it to university, there was this high degree of young people, say, starting university for the first semester, for the first year, they might take out a student loan
Mm-hmm.
in the worst case scenario, and then they drop out for whatever reasons. And those reasons were always a variable. And I learned more about that later in my travels, but those reasons about what are challenging for young people. But they'd end up no degree, in debt, uh, and no job,
Mm-hmm.
no real job. Like not a great opportunity in front of them. They might work in the service industry if they got that, but a lot of them were not employed. And so there was this kind of like, you know, extensive kind of pool of young people here unemployed and not in school. And so I was speaking with my friend at the time, Amanda, and I was like, why didn't somebody just start a program to train kids to become software developers? There's a lot of opportunity right now. I don't have a
Mm-hmm.
degree in this. My degrees were in music, but I was able to find meaningful and decent work whenever I needed it in the software industry. So there's a lot of opportunity, and these were well-paying jobs and great trajectories in terms of a career. But how do we get people there in a way that was quick and not the 4 year route? And so that's kind of how we started out. We started, um, I moved back down here and started piloting. And I first went over to the St. Anna's Community Center, and started teaching kids how to build video games for
Mm-hmm.
iOS and Android and stuff like that, and just piloting with video game development as a kind of book. And that's shortly after that is when I met you. Uh, I'd already run a few boot camp style things, and we started uh, shortly after that. I got, I guess it was about a year in, I got my first grant and was able to hire my first employee, and then we started to scale from there. And
Mm-hmm.
we ended up a couple of years later with two programs. Sorry.
It's good background.
Um, so the yeah, we ended up developing a workforce track for 18 and up, and then a high school program. And fast forward now, that workforce track is basically still the same path or same model of training. It's kind of a rapid immersive thing, and basically students in 6 to 8 months they can come in with no knowledge,
Mm-hmm.
and if they have the aptitude and kind of the grit type thing to get through this program, 6 to 8 months later they're at a junior level as a software developer. And um, the outcomes in that program are pretty great. Like we're I think we're close to 450 grads from that
Oh,
program.
wow.
Yeah, and I think we're at 95% employed in the industry. So they're all, the vast majority of them went into junior software developer jobs, got
Mm-hmm.
great pay, and now we've got even alumni going all the way back to 2016 was when our first graduating body. So we have senior developers now that are grads of our program. So that's a good 10 years into a career. And so um, that program is impactful. We worked really hard. You know, our Jessa, who leads our student success team, and and Johnny's on that team, so they're kind of supporting the students as they go through the program. Peter and Katie and who else is on Patrice and Alex and Jessica, the, and then Taylor. And you probably remember Harvey. I don't know if you remember Harvey.
I
He's
do.
still,
Yeah.
he's still with us. They're they're on the education side. They're all, some of them are grads from our program and some of them are not. Some of them are just software developers.
Hmm.
But they educate. They're the ones in with the students every day, and um, they work really hard to provide not only this immersive training experience, like the reason it's so successful, the program, I think, is there's two kind of elements to it. Well, there's three. One, we have a fair bit of support for people coming from more challenged situations. So we're really
Right.
trying hard to remove barriers so people can just sit down and focus hard for this
Hmm.
short period of time. And if we can clear away those barriers for people so that they can sit down and commit to this program, which is a daily kind of practice, then they're going to succeed. The couple of interesting things about the program, the adult program, uh, we call it immersion because it's an everyday kind of thing. We
Hmm.
start the first 2 months of it are part-time studies,
Okay.
uh, and the first course is free. We want people to come try their hand at this for a few weeks. I think it's a 3-week course now. We call it prep, and it's basically all of the things that you should have learned in high school with computer science, but probably didn't.
Right.
And you get to practice it 4 days a week, 2 or 3 hours a night for 3 weeks. And if the light bulb goes off for you, then you can choose to continue on in our studies. And
Hmm.
after that is when tuition starts and like student aid and all that kind of stuff. But that first program really allows people to come try their hand at this without having to take out a loan or quit a
Right.
job, or they get to really discover if coding and software development is a career they want to pursue.
Hmm.
And it's pretty effective way of doing it because I feel like sometimes these programs will give aptitude tests, and I think those can be helpful, but I honestly feel like we may miss people for whom that 20-minute session, when you're giving them a test, they may not have had
Right.
their best moment in that test. Secondly, I think abstract reasoning and the kind of like problem solving that goes along with software development is something that you have to practice, and you get better at it as you practice. It's a little bit like playing an instrument or whatever. So the first time you pick up your trumpet, you're not going to sound very good. So, but if you practice and get a little bit more into it, you really start to understand what this is, what the environment is, what you're building, how you build, what the tools are, what to reach for when a certain problem or pattern presents itself. And that's just practice and familiarity. And I don't think I think aptitude tests work if you're in practice for
Hmm.
that thing and you've got either a very natural inkling for it, like you're super, you know, you know, talented in that department.
Right.
But the vast majority of people are really adept at abstract reasoning. Human beings are. But if we give them the opportunity to practice within a certain domain, then they can really see whether or not this is for them. And
Hmm.
without charging them like money for that and a big commitment and all that, then it gives them a real opportunity to try this and not, we avoid the debt and the problem that often happens for young people when they go to university
Right.
and they change majors or they drop out because they're overwhelmed or whatever. So
Hmm.
it it's a little bit like that. So then they move on, in the program, and I think the other couple of components that are interesting about the program is that the frequency of practice is key. Like we're doing this every day, and it ramps up in terms of time and commitment. Once you get to the full time part of the program, there's phases of it where you're in the structured part of the program 6 days a week, 11 hours a day,
Right.
and people always are like, "What? That's crazy," but it's not undoable. We've got
Right.
450 grads, and it means that if you just are able to commit that 4 months of your life, you're basically taking 4 years or more of practice into that you would have gotten in a university if it's a good university, uh, and you're doing it in that short period of time. But that frequency of practice really does ramp up your ability. You're now immersed in this, you're living and breathing it every day, and that type of practice really ramps people up in terms
Hmm.
of their abilities. It's not equivalent to say I do this once a week for 4 years or whatever.
Right.
You are not, if you go to the gym every day and you work out and you're working out different parts of your body and all that kind of stuff, you're a bodybuilder or you're a weightlifter or you're an
Right.
athlete. And that's what we're doing in this program. Our grads come out of this highly capable, not just, having practiced and have this stuff at their fingertips, but
Hmm.
in the program, we put them into a kind of a learning phase where over and over again, there's like 20 projects that they do where we're putting them into a situation where they have some of the information to solve the problems, but they have to go and they research and learn
Hmm.
on the fly. And that doing that over and over again builds this sort of confidence where you can now drop this person into that in the professional world, that
Right.
that situation where they know this computer language, they have to learn a new one, no problem, I've been there
Hmm.
before. Even though it's maybe a bit intimidating, I was intimidated back then, but I got it. I've got this confidence now. I know I can solve this. I've got the ability to do that. And that's, an interesting component about the program. Finally, the cohort experience, like almost from the beginning of our programming, even in the part-time studies, there's a pair programming and project-based kind of approach to things, which means you're reliant on your pair. That does a lot for two things. One, there's this natural bump and grind that happens between human
Hmm.
beings. You are constantly working with somebody and you have to critique and give, you have to be critiqued and give critique
Right.
and do it in a way that makes things copacetic. And we're almost hands off in that part of it. We put the people together and they got to figure it out. And there's feedback sessions around their, performance in these interactions. But it sorts itself out. We're giving people the opportunity to kind of temper themselves and level out and learn how to come together and work together
Hmm.
in a way that is natural. And human beings are good at that. They're good at cooperation when you let it happen. There's very
Right.
few times where I have to jump in as the school principal and, have some sort of like, break things up basically, or that kind of stuff. It doesn't happen all that often. And that's because there's this cohort experience where our students want to be there. They're bound to come back the next day because they'd be letting their teammate down.
Hmm.
So there's this vibe that happens between the students, and they come away with kind of lifelong friendships and professional contacts. And it really, that cohort experience really does keep and propel them to
Hmm.
go through the program and complete. So those are some of the interesting parts of it. All that said, um, we also have a high school program where we've got 1,000 kids now
Oh, it's a
every year.
thousand. Wow.
Yeah, Mayuk is our director of high school programs, and he's and his team been quietly crushing it on the high school side. And basically, what we've done there is we've taken the adult curriculum and broken it up into semester-based, a 2-year track.
Okay.
So the students can actually join the second year. It's a 2-year thing. In their second year, they have the option of we've added some additional courses. We have video game programming for the high schoolers, and we have an IoT, like programming hardware,
Hmm.
like smart home things and all that kind of stuff. Um, but they can do a half day program with us in their second year, kind of like NOCA, where you go to
Oh, that's
small group.
great. Yes.
Yeah. So we got small handfuls of kids doing that every year. And when they graduate from that, it's basically like they've done 2/3 of the adult program
Hmm.
at age 18. And they can come in then and join the final third of the
Oh,
adult program
wow.
in summer,
Yes.
graduate at age 18 and step into a $70,000 job. And we've got kids doing that. I interviewed 4 of our original grads from that program. We have a little podcast that I do from time to time called Nerds of New Orleans. And I was interviewing our grads mostly and seeing where they ended up and all that kind of stuff. And one crew I interviewed not too long ago was around, well, maybe it's a year ago now. I think it was January last year. And we call them the Fab Four. They were the original kids from our high school program that
Hmm.
graduated from that half day track and went straight into jobs. And every one of them did well. Second or third job now, where they're into the 6-figure salaries at age 24.
Mm-hmm.
so they're doing well. Um, and yeah, that program's across the state. They do teacher training now. They've got a bunch of teachers trained up in schools that aren't our employees.
Mm-hmm.
We train them on our curriculum, and then they take this curriculum to the high schools, and it's part of the Department of Education's pathway for technical training. So the kids get industry-based credentials for it, and it counts as a school elective and things like that. So they're busy and just bringing this kind of like software development experience into schools everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And it you know they're fun projects that the high schoolers are doing, but it's also they're real projects. They're actually using real tools the way we've built
Right.
software in the industry. And that was one of the things that I was adamant about in the beginning, is that we don't want to use a website like uh, Code Academy or one of these things.
Mm-hmm.
I want you to use the real tools the way software is really built. And so we get students into that very early, even in the high school program. Anyway, I just yapped for about 20 minutes there.
No, that's great. No, that explained everything. What I love about your program the most is that it's a people-centric approach where you're actually thinking about what are the barriers. And I think that's happens a lot in education is that no one is actually taking time to like, what are the barriers to make sure that people are able to come to these programs, but also, stay in these programs. So
Yeah.
it's so great to see that y'all are thinking it through and figuring out ways to help students in the ways that you need and give them the necessary resources they help to be able to get to the next level, and that's very important.
Yeah. And we've got some good partners, that have helped us out along the way. I got to shout out Kellogg Foundation, and Youth Force NOLA has been a big
Oh
partner in
yes.
the high school
Hmm.
program. Um, Kellogg, Capital One has been funding our high school program for
Hmm.
years, and we're just piecing it together from various supporters. But for example, the Kellogg folks helped us over the years with all of the support things, all of those. When we talk about removing barriers for participants, we really want them to be able to sit down without the noise,
Hmm.
and any kind of challenges that might be going on in their life, just pause those things, help them get away from it, and or solve them, at least in the short term. Because if we can get them to sit down and focus for 4 months, and I say 4 months because the first 2 months are part-time, and
Right.
it's a commitment, but it's not the same
Hmm.
as a 4 month thing where you can't really have a job in that time. So if we can help people do that, part of it is a financial thing, but a lot of it is an emotional thing too, and that comes down to uh, a coaching activity and a
Hmm.
relationship there. Um, I'm thinking of another program we had with Urbanly where we had a coach on their side and a coach on our side. And this coach ran alongside. This was specifically targeting younger people going through our program. And that coaching element of just saying, you know, getting with the participant or the student and saying, hey, you're not giving up. I'm coming to get you. I'm going to drive out to your house. I'm picking
Hmm.
you up. You're going to make it to class today, and we're going to do this. Just having that big brother, big sister kind of coaching thing. And in some cases, like I'm thinking of Jessa on our team. I'm thinking of a Kin who was on our team in the adult program for a while doing this role. They're grads of our program.
Hmm.
So they've gone through the program. They know how difficult it can be at points. And they're able to get with the student and say, hey, I've been there. I did it. You can do it. And
Right.
I'm not letting you not do it.
Hmm.
And sometimes that's all it takes. I can remember my father saying to me when I was a teenager, he's like, you're graduating from high school. I don't after that we can talk, but you are going to complete this thing, and that's all you need
Right.
to do. And you didn't have a choice. And in those kinds of characters in our lives, that kind of influence is I think what we need along the ways. And honestly, there was even times when I was in doing my master's degree, I was like, oh my God, this is so much.
Right. I
You're
know that.
stressed out, and
Yeah.
you need that kind of coach. In
Hmm.
my world, I always had a private teacher throughout my music career, and that person was my coach.
Hmm.
They were picking you up and dusting you off and pushing you back out there to get at it. And um and that's what we need for young people and even adults. So Kellogg, all back to our supporters, supported those roles and supported tuition scholarships, childcare
Hmm.
support, um, and living stipends. And
Oh.
are critical,
Yeah, they are.
without that support from Kellogg, for example. Entergy was a big help earlier in our growth. You know, we wouldn't be able to take those barriers away and help people.
Hmm.
And for example, that I have some numbers around it too. Like the partnership we had with Urban League, and we were running that dual coaching thing.
Hmm.
We upped the number of 18 to 24-year-olds graduates by 300% in
Wow.
those years that we did it. Because it would just you just it's that kind of mentorship and coaching that really makes a
Hmm.
difference. So, and sometimes it is an emotional thing. People
Right.
are lack confidence. We all do when we're learning something new,
Yeah.
and you just need to hear over and over again that that's okay. It's not. We have a little saying at Operation Spark that's in our handbooks and it's everywhere, where nothing is hard. It's just new. You know.
That's a good one. Yeah, it's just new.
Yeah.
Um, Some of you actually you brought this up a little, but like, most people think when they think of coding and those type of thing, they're thinking purely technical. But I've heard you and me as well feel the same way about it. You describe it as being more about being creative. Like, in what ways do you see coding as creative expression, and also how it like plays into your background in arts? Because also like I went to grad school for art, so we both are kind of spanned away for those things, but I feel like it all plays, back to, make me who I am in my career. So how does all of that play for you, in the creative space?
Yeah, I thought about that a few times. Like when I was before I flipped my career, when I was working mostly as a professional musician and dipping my toe into software engineering, I met a lot of professional software engineers who
Hmm.
were musicians, like not professionally, but they studied when they were young and they
Right.
kept up playing classical guitar, or piano, or whatever.
Hmm.
So that I always, you know, identify that there seemed to be this crossover there between this activities or these two types of activities. At least, there were more numbers around, more pattern. You identify. You're just like, oh, it's almost like when you buy a car and you start seeing that car around the city everywhere you
Right.
drive, and you start identifying that similarity. Anyway, I was doing that with musicians, and we'd always talk and stuff like that. Later, started thinking about it when I got deeper into software engineering, and I realized like there's a lot of abstraction in software engineering. You're building things, but it's in your head. You are writing code, but you're visualizing the way this is processing. The way I kind of describe software engineering is two parts: is an architectural part to it, how
Hmm.
systems are built and
Right.
communicate, the parts of the systems communicate with each other, and then there's just processing data of some kind.
Hmm.
You're just using data and processing it and filtering it or changing it in some kind of way. All of the When you're designing all that stuff, architecture, when you think about that, it's really like building a house in a lot of ways. So when you're thinking about it and you're writing code, you're sort of visualizing how these things are like kind of working and talking to each other and all that sort of stuff. And I think music, for me anyway, is a similar abstraction. When you think about, like, my instrument was drums, I played drums.
Hmm.
It's all time based for the most
Right.
part, time and texture, I guess. But it, you know, you're thinking in abstract ways. When you think about just counting four beats, it's abstract, eh? Like it's just
Hmm.
like, where's that coming from? We can feel it, but to communicate it and think about it is very abstract. You have to kind of like visualize it in some kind of way in your mind, and then wrap the feeling around it and bring it into existence. And I
Hmm.
think that software is a similar thing. It's the same thing. If you were designing a house, you start with a blank page, or a painting. You start with a blank page, and you want to draw something out of that. You want to start building something there, and
Yeah.
putting some sort of structure down and all that kind of stuff. And I feel like it's a similar kind of like going on in your head, the way you're juggling things in your head or thinking about it in your head. So I wonder if that's partly the crossover there. I don't
Hmm.
know. I'd have to talk to other musicians about how they.
But no, I agree. So I want to just touch a little on like your leadership and just you working within the nonprofit sector. Like what have you learned about nonprofits versus working in the private industry based off of like your experiences? I can only imagine.
Yeah. I mean, I almost want to avoid that question completely because for one, I think I'm an unlikely leader. Somebody asked me to, and one of the Tulane former heads of Tulane asked me to join this conference a few times to
Hmm.
talk about leadership, and I got up there and I was like, leadership doesn't happen because you take a leadership course. Or I was actually speaking at their leadership course, and
Hmm.
I didn't get invited back because I got up there and I was like, there's no such thing as real leadership. That what happens is that there's a crisis and real leaders step up. The people that are,
Hmm.
when you think about um like people don't want to do that. I didn't want to do this. I just saw
Hmm.
the and I didn't take any leadership courses or any of that kind of stuff. And um there was just this desire to want to try to do something, you know, for lack of a better word, was just to help people out. Like
Hmm.
I just felt we could do better by young people, and young people are getting
Right.
ripped off. Is basically, and I felt really strongly about that. I went through the university system, but I did so in a kind of pathway that was go at your own risk. Like nobody's
Right.
you're a fool if you become a musician. Um, but if you're going into all these degrees that are 4 years and they're strapping on the cost of education is rising and rising, you know, it, and there's the outcomes are not there, then there's something wrong with that system. And I felt really strongly that we should try to do something about it.
Hmm.
And so that just was an unlikely convergence of like things. My friend was putting this problem in front of me. I was kind of at a place in my career where I could do
Do
this. I
that.
didn't have
Yeah.
kids. I didn't have
Right.
I wasn't tied to any kind of place, and so I just was like, well, let's try this out. I think we
Hmm.
can do better. So I, I think then you're learning along the way.
Right.
Like for one, we've got to figure out how to make this work and how to make it impactful. And I think that takes vision and drive, and that's often not putting you in a good place with other people because other people don't necessarily know what's necessary or
Right.
whatever. They're coming in, they want a job, and they want to chill, or they
Right.
want things
Right.
to be copacetic, or and
Hmm.
and so I think you have to set the tone pretty early and try to stay up on it. It can be very, very difficult, and I'm not particularly good at that part
Hmm.
because I just want I here's the way I've kind of like looked at my own relationship to this role.
Hmm.
Um, like I went to music schools, and the music schools I went to Manhattan School of Music, and I went to McGill University in Montreal, and these are the two top schools of music in both countries, Canada and
Hmm.
United States. And the programs I was in, like you know, nobody there's nobody there, there's no besides your teacher. You've got one teacher that you choose, right?
Right.
So you're going after some master and you're saying, hey, I want to study with you. That one person is coaching you. Nobody else cares if you get out of bed and and uh and succeed, right? So
Sure.
you're
Yeah.
you're in there with all these people that are the youngest, greatest talent coming up in the United States or whatever. If you don't get out of bed and practice, you're not going to make it. And even your teacher will give up on you if you're not, practicing or whatever. It's not,
Right.
this isn't like your mom. So it's a very competitive environment. And there was a movie I saw not a decade ago called, what's it called? It was about the drummer who goes to college, and I was like, oh my god, that was totally my like experience. What was it called? Forget the name of that movie. Um, oh, it, but it was, it
Hmm.
wasn't too much unlike this film where there's a lot of stress and
Hmm.
you're, a lot of competition,
Right.
and so you are driven. All the
Hmm.
people around you are driven, and when somebody asks you to join their band, which is I was a side musician, so I barely ever led my own groups or whatever. You've got to perform, and that the people beside you are also side musicians, and they
Hmm.
are expecting high level from you and you are expecting high level from them.
Right.
And so there's this community kind of like critique going on constantly. That's what I was used to. And I don't
Hmm.
think most people are used to that.
And yeah, they're not, yeah, necessary. Yeah, you had like a crash course. So yeah, it
Yes.
definitely was natural. It came to you. So I noticed like y'all been doing a lot of expanding, and you're getting in different areas and getting new partnerships and just doing a lot to be innovative. Like how you are getting a chance to like balance being innovative and doing the expansions with sustainability when running this type of organization.
Yeah, it's not, I think it's become more and more difficult in the last years, several years since the
Hmm.
pandemic. Um, you know, I think um, I almost wish we'd started OpSpark in the 90s or the
Hmm.
mid 90s or something. There was just a period of opportunity there that and availability like that, and by that I mean young people were more available for something like this back then. In my
Right.
as I lived through that time, so I
Right.
know kind of what was going on in the economy and what was going on in education, culture, and all that kind of stuff. So it's becoming more and more challenging. Um, I think you know so the question is, how do we go about balancing innovation, being looking for, it's a little bit like when I was saying earlier, like you know, the Kellogg initiative, like I submitted to them a an a request, and I very specifically asked for X, Y, and Z,
Hmm.
and I asked for those things because we identified that here's the things that we think can make a big difference.
Hmm.
And the 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 way we came up with that is just from the experience of running the program and working with students closely and seeing where the challenges were and then trying to find something that would solve those challenges.
Hmm.
And I think that's one element. We're just sort of constantly doing that. And that's just like a recognition thing, like pattern,
Right.
looking at patterns and numbers and trying to figure out how we might be able to help. And then also
Hmm.
like, you know, thinking about it from your own perspective, like there's a huge emotional piece to training and trying to get someone to another level. They're
Right.
going through a lot in that thing. And how do we help that person? It's challenging in this day and age. There's so many times I'd like to just sit down with a student or a person or whatever and just tell them flat out, this is what I would do because this is how my teachers taught me,
Right.
you
Right.
know. But it's challenging too at the same time because there's all kinds of liability and strange things
Right.
that you
Right.
have to deal with. And I don't think that's a good thing. I think, that whole industry of is sometimes an hindrance.
Hmm.
So so there's some challenges there, but I think, you're throwing things at the wall to see what sticks. And when it
Right.
comes, so there's removing barriers. That's one thing we're always trying to, iterate on. Then there's what other opportunities can we help with? You
Hmm.
know, expansion is one thing. Like we're slowly starting up in Atlanta and in Georgia, and I think, what are people going to do on the other side of Operation Spark? What are our grads going to do? Can we help them continue to train? Can we help them go on to university if they want to do that? How do we help them do that where um, they're not going to they're getting some credit, or they're not going to pay as much, or there's a
Hmm.
flexibility component to it. So
Right.
we're always just trying to figure out what's next for, in that case, like what are our grads going to do afterwards, and can we support them
Hmm.
in that way? I think, you know, we're we've been over the years thinking about how we can try to widen the door to opportunity. Like our software engineering track is a heavy lift, and not everyone's a super nerd to become a software engineer. Like maybe 20% of the population,
Hmm.
kind of have the collective traits to want to do this.
Right.
Um, and that's natural, right? Not everybody's going to
Hmm.
be a software engineer, just like not everyone's going to be a carpenter or whatever. So, um, what are the other opportunities in tech? We're adjacent to the tech industry. So recently, we've been looking for partnership to run a program in video game QA. It's an entry level position where these jobs, start out at a decent salary, but they ramp up as you get more experience and you get into project management and uh, project management and UX as a
Hmm.
career
Yeah.
track. And these are more of approachable trainings and opportunities compared to our engineering track. So let's try to run some cohorts through this training and get them into the field and see how things go. I think that there's opportunity for us to do things like that where we're making it more approachable to train in this way, in this rapid kind of approach to a career.
Hmm.
So, you know, that's another way that we're thinking about it. It's always like figuring out not just improve the current thing that we're doing, but providing more opportunity one way or the other.
Hmm. You actually kind of answered my last question. Was just wondering about what you were most excited about the future of Operation Spark. But it seems like you guys are just doing so many great things and going in new directions. I can't wait to see this expansion with you going into Atlanta and wherever you go next. And I just know it's just going to continue to grow and just change so many people's lives as they get a chance to be able to thrive in, atmospheres that actually give them a chance to focus just on that one thing and not necessarily have to worry about some of those barriers to continue to be able to learn and just make decisions about what they want next for them in their life. So I really do appreciate that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, we'll see.
I see him. That's a good end, like a great end. Like, yeah.
He's trying to mug me for treats. That's what he's like right now. He thinks I'm gonna give him some more treats before I run the house today. Yeah, we'll see what's happening. Like things are changing rapidly, so AI is a thing now. So we're
Right.
we're looking at really integrating this in a training opportunity. How do our grads come away wielding the skills to work in the LLM space,
Hmm.
develop with AI. And we're already doing that kind of naturally, but we'll see. We've got some ideas coming down the pipe. The other thing we're looking at is I've been goofing around with advanced manufacturing type
Oh.
on a micro scale, and so training
Hmm.
people around CAD and
Oh, that'd be
CNC
great. Yeah.
and things like this, where I think the United States we're kind of heading back into sort of micro manufacturing. And so
Hmm.
how can we get people into these fields in the same kind of rapid approach where you're not having to take 4 years out of your life and spend $80,000 or
Hmm.
$100,000 to do it.
No, no, that's great. I'm really excited about how that, turns out next for you with that. Well, thank you so much for being on the show today. I truly appreciate you and get everyone else getting a chance to learn more about Operation Spark. I'm gonna definitely put all the information on the YouTube so everyone listening, you can go to their website, learn more, and then potentially get involved in different ways, donate, volunteer, or actually get into one of the courses and see, how this can potentially change your life. Thank you guys and have a wonderful day.
Thanks,
And
Trisha.
thank you so much, John.